He had a sleeping 6-year-old on his shoulder and a fake apology in his face, and the night clerk still found a way to make it worse. "I'm going to need you to step back from the desk, sir." That was the line, not shouted, said gently, almost kindly, the way some people learn to be cruel so quietly that you start to wonder if you imagined it. The man in the gray hoodie did not step back. He stood on the marble floor of the lobby with his son breathing against his collar, a worn plush elephant tucked under the boy's chin. And he watched the clerk's eyes do the math. Hoodie. Tired face. No suitcase that announced money. A child instead of a credit card. The clerk reached a verdict before the man finished his sentence. What the clerk did not know, what the manager who came next did not know, what none of the 14 people scattered around that lobby at midnight knew, was that the man being told he could not stay had signed the check for the floor they were standing on. He owned it. Not a share of it. All of it. And before the lobby clock reached 1 in the morning, 2 people would lose their jobs in front of every one of those witnesses. If you have ever stood somewhere with every right to be there and been treated like you wandered in by mistake, stay with me. This one is going to land. His name was Andre Coleman, and he was 41 years old, and he had not meant to stop here at all that night. He had been in the air for most of 2 days. A delayed connection out of Atlanta, a stroller checked and lost somewhere over Tennessee, a 6-year-old who had cried himself out an hour before landing and then gone limp against his father with the total, boneless trust that only sleeping children manage. By the time the rental car crossed the bridge into the historic district, it was past midnight, and Andre's house was still another 50 minutes south. Driving it in that state, with Micah asleep in the back, felt like a bad decision waiting to introduce itself. So, he made the simple choice. He pulled up to the one place in Savannah he knew better than his own kitchen. The Callaway House. The flagship of Sterling Oak Hospitality Group, the company he had grown over 13 years, from a single tired motor lodge outside Mobile into 41 properties across 9 states. He had walked this lobby before it had walls. He had argued with the architect about the height of the front desk. He had named the building himself, after the boarding house his mother kept in the years she could not find work anywhere that would let her in the front entrance. There was a reason he was dressed the way he was. A jacket that had been good once, a hoodie underneath it. Sneakers he could run an airport in. Andre had a habit that made his executives nervous. Every few months, he walked into one of his own hotels with no warning, no reservation, nobody alerted, looking like a man who had nowhere better to be. It was the only honest way he knew to see what a place actually was when it thought no one important was watching. His mother taught him that, though she never used those words. Loretta Coleman cleaned rooms for 21 years at a hotel 2 streets from where Andre now stood. She came home most nights with her feet wrecked and her dignity carried very carefully, like a glass she did not want to spill. She told him once, folding towels at the kitchen table, that you could learn everything worth knowing about a place by watching how it treated the people it had already decided couldn't do a thing for it, not the guests in the good shoes, the ones it thought it could ignore for free. She had been gone 4 years now. He still heard her in rooms like this one. Micah shifted against him and mumbled something into the hoodie, half a word, gone before it finished. Andre adjusted his arm under the boy's weight and crossed to the desk. The clerk was young, maybe 25, in the navy uniform Andre had approved a sample of 2 winters ago. His name tag said Garrett. He looked up, and the recalibration happened fast. That small, private rearrangement of a face that thinks it has read a man correctly. "Evening," Andre said. "I need a room for the night. 1 king is fine. It's just us." Garrett looked at his screen for a beat longer than the screen required. "We've actually got a policy for late walk-ins without a reservation," he said. "There's a security deposit, and honestly, the system's not showing me anything clean tonight. I'd try one of the places off the interstate. They're used to this kind of thing." This kind of thing. The phrase sat in the air with a little hook on it. "What's the deposit?" Andre asked. "I'll pay it." "It's not really about the money, sir." Garrett gave him a smile, shaped like an apology with nothing behind it. We just can't accommodate a walk-in like this right now. Andre did not raise his voice. He had learned a long time ago that the calmest person in a room is usually the one holding the most. "All right," he said, and he stepped to the side, still holding his son, and he waited. He did not wait long for the lesson to arrive on its own. The revolving door turned, and a man in a camel coat came in alone. No bag, car keys still in his hand. He walked up to the desk the way certain people walk up to desks, already certain of the answer. "Any chance you've got a room? My flight got canceled. Total mess." Garrett's whole body changed. The shoulders came up. The smile turned real. "Absolutely. Let me see what I can do." 40 seconds of typing. "I've got a beautiful king on the 4th floor. No deposit needed, I'll just take a card." The man laughed, relieved. A walk-in. No reservation. The exact thing Andre had just been told the building could not do. Andre watched all of it. He did not say a word because there was nothing left to say that the moment had not already said for him. Two men understood exactly what had happened. Only one of them would ever admit it out loud. "Before I tell you what he did, do me one favor. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and whether you've ever been the person at that desk being told there's no room." I read them. All of them. "I'd like to speak with whoever's in charge tonight," Andre said, once the camel coat had gone up with his key. Garrett's smile thinned. He picked up the phone. The manager came out of the back within 2 minutes, and he came out already decided. His tag said Wesley Pruitt, and he was the kind of man who wears a full suit at midnight because he believes authority is something you hold up with your collar. He positioned himself beside Garrett, two of them on one side of the dark wood, Andre and a sleeping child on the other. The geometry of it was not an accident. "Sir, I understand there's been a misunderstanding," Pruitt said. "My associate has explained our late arrival policy. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do for you tonight." "There's no misunderstanding," Andre said. "I watched your associate turn me away and then check in a walk-in with no reservation and no deposit, 90 seconds apart. I'm asking you to explain the difference between those two men." Something flickered behind Pruitt's eyes, the brief panic of a man whose script has been interrupted, replaced almost at once by something harder. "My staff make judgment calls. That's what we pay them for. I stand behind Garrett." "Judgment calls," Andre repeated, not as a question. He let it sit there. For a moment he thought about his mother's hands. 21 years of them. The particular way she came home and sat for a few minutes without speaking before she could be herself again. She had never been bitter about it, which was the part Andre could never get over. What she handed him instead of bitterness was a kind of clarity, sharp and cold and useful, and he felt it settle into him now in the lobby of a building he had paid for with his own name. He was not going to tell them who he was. Not yet. He needed to see the whole shape of it first, because if this was happening here, at the property that was supposed to set the standard for 40 other ones, then he needed to understand exactly how deep it went before he decided what to do about it. "I'd like your full name and your title," Andre said, spelled out, "for my own records." Pruitt gave both, with no warmth, the way you hand over information you assume will never be used. Andre noted them the way he noted everything. Quietly, completely, without performing it. That was when Micah woke up. Children do not wake the way adults do. They come back all at once. The boy lifted his head off his father's shoulder, blinked into the warm light, and took in the whole tableau in a single sweep. The two men in suits, the way his father was standing. The two large men in dark blazers who had drifted in from somewhere near the entrance and now stood a polite, threatening distance away. Micah clutched the gray elephant tighter and looked straight at Wesley Pruitt. "Did we do something wrong?" he asked. His voice was small and clear, and it carried farther than he meant it to. It reached the couple by the cold fireplace. It reached the young woman at the concierge stand, whose hands had gone still on her keyboard. It reached the two officers, one of whom shifted his weight like the floor had gotten uncomfortable. Pruitt did not answer the boy. He looked at Andre instead. which was its own kind of answer. Micah worked the problem the way 6-year-olds work problems, out loud and without mercy. If they don't want us to sleep here, he said slowly, then who are they being nice to? Nobody had a thing to say to that. Andre crouched down so he was level with his son, one knee on the marble, and he kept his voice warm and even, the voice he saved for telling the boy that the world's broken parts were never his fault. You didn't do anything, buddy. Not one thing. I promise you that. Micah studied his face for evidence, found it, and nodded. When Andre stood back up, Pruitt had run out of patience with the whole scene. The boy's question had pulled eyes into the room that he did not want there, and like a certain kind of man, the loss of control made him grip harder, not softer. I think we're done here, Pruitt said, the hospitality draining out of his voice entirely. He glanced at the two officers. Walk them out, please. Phones had come up around the lobby. Not raised high, not obvious. Just angled. People had decided, each for their own reasons, that this was a thing worth keeping. If you want to see what happened the second Wesley Pruitt gave that order, make sure you're subscribed. Because the next 90 seconds are the entire reason I'm telling you this. The officer on the left took a step. Andre did not move toward the door. He did not raise his hand or his voice. He simply stayed where he was, his son's hand now folded into his, and he looked at Pruitt with the calm of a man who has finished gathering everything he came to gather. Here is the thing none of them knew. Andre had not chosen the Calloway house at random. Tomorrow morning, in the ballroom one floor up, Sterling Oak was opening its annual leadership summit. Every regional director in the company was asleep upstairs. So was the woman who ran the entire operation under Andre, the company's president, a woman named Eleanor Shaw, who had been awake until 20 minutes ago in the closed restaurant off the lobby, going over the next day's program with a pot of cold coffee and a stack of name cards. She was still in there when Micah asked his question. The door was open. She heard most of it. But the first person to recognize Andre was not Eleanor Shaw. It was an old man named Walter. Walter had worked the door at the Calloway house since the week it opened. He was 68 and he wore a maroon coat, and he had shaken Andre's hand on opening night when Andre cut the ribbon with his mother's kitchen scissors because he had wanted to use something of hers. Walter had come back inside out of the cold, drawn by the strange stillness in the room. And when he saw who was standing in the middle of it, his face went the color of paper. He did not make a speech. He just turned and walked, fast for a man his age, toward the restaurant door. Eleanor Shaw came out a few seconds later. She was not dressed for a confrontation. Reading glasses pushed up into gray hair, a cardigan, a pen still in her hand. But she crossed that lobby with a directness that made the two officers step back without being told. And she walked straight past Pruitt and Garrett as though they were furniture, and she stopped in front of Andre and the boy. "Mr. Coleman," she said. Her voice was quiet, and it carried anyway, because the room had gone so silent that quiet was all it took. "How long have you been standing in this lobby?" "About 20 minutes, Andre said. Eleanor closed her eyes for 1 second, the way you do when something hurts. Then she opened them and turned to face the desk. "For everyone in this room who doesn't know," she said, "this is Andre Coleman. He founded Sterling Oak Hospitality. He owns this hotel. He owns the desk you're leaning on, the carpet under your feet, and the paychecks with your name on them. He built this building and he named it after his mother." She let that land. Nobody moved. Garrett had both hands flat on the mahogany like he needed it to keep standing. Pruitt's face had begun a slow process of rearranging itself around a fact it could not absorb. Micah tugged his father's hand and looked up at him. "Daddy," he whispered, loud enough for the front row of the lobby to hear. "Is this our hotel?" Something in Andre's face came apart and put itself back together, gentler this time. He picked his son up and settled him on his hip. "Yeah, bud," he said. This one's ours. It was Pruitt who broke the silence, which took either courage or stupidity, and in his case, was probably both. Mr. Coleman, please. We had no way of knowing. If you'd just told us who you were, none of this. You're right, Andre said. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to, because the room had handed him all the quiet he could ever want. You had no idea who I was. That's not your defense. That's the whole confession. Pruitt's mouth stayed open with nothing coming out of it. You didn't look at a man and a tired kid and decide we weren't worth a room because of anything I said, Andre went on. You decided it the second we came through the door, off of a hoodie and a face. You charge some men a story about a deposit, and you hand other men a key with a smile, and the only thing that changed between those two men was which one you thought you could get away with. He paused. And you did it tonight in front of my son. The boy on his hip had gone quiet, watching. My mother cleaned hotel rooms for 21 years, Andre said. 2 streets from here. She came through the service entrance every morning of my childhood because the front door wasn't built for women like her, and she never once got to be a guest in a place like this one. I built this company so that the next person who walks in carrying nothing but a kid and a long day gets treated like they matter before they prove a single thing to anybody. Not after you check their shoes. Before. He looked at Eleanor Shaw. She gave him a small nod, and then she looked at Wesley Pruitt, and the nod was for him too, in a different way. Mr. Pruitt, Andre said, you're done. Tonight. Not because you didn't know who I was. Because of who you decided I was. Pruitt opened his mouth one more time. Andre was already done listening. Eleanor will handle the paperwork. You can go. Pruitt stood there a moment with whatever argument he had left dying quietly in his chest. Then, he straightened his jacket. That small, reflexive gesture of a man trying to save the last whole piece of himself. And he walked toward the back without another word. Andre turned to the desk, to Garrett, who looked like he had not taken a full breath in minutes, his jaw locked, his eyes too bright. Andre crossed to him slowly and gave him time to understand it was coming. You made a call tonight based on what a man looked like, Andre said, and his voice was even, almost gentle. I'm not going to end your career over it. But I want you to sit with what it felt like to be the man on the other side of that desk, because you're about to spend real time learning it. You're going into retraining, not how to use the booking system, what this work is actually for and who it's for and what it costs people when you forget. If you finish it and you still want to be here, the door's open. But what happened tonight does not happen again. Not to anyone. Garrett nodded. It was a small motion. It looked real. Last, Andre walked to the concierge stand, where the young woman had stood frozen through all of it, her hands flat, her face braced for trouble she hadn't caused. Her name tag said, Nadia. You saw it, Andre said, low enough that it was only for her. She started. You knew it was wrong and you couldn't find a way to say it out loud because the man you'd have had to say it to ran your schedule. He shook his head once. That's not your failure. That's a failure of whoever built a room where the right thing was that hard to say. He watched her for a second. But I saw you tonight. I saw you track every piece of it. I saw the part of you that knew exactly where the line was, even when you couldn't cross it. Starting tomorrow, you're moving up. I need people in rooms like this who can act on what they already know is true. Nadia's expression moved through about 4 things and landed somewhere between relief and resolve. I won't let you down, she said. I know, Andre said. That's why. He turned to face what was left of the lobby. The guests were watching openly now. No more angled phones. Just people waiting to hear the end of a thing they had not expected to witness on a Tuesday at 1 a.m. I've built a lot of these, Andre said, to all of them and none of them. And there's exactly one rule I've never once let anybody talk me out of. Everybody who comes through that door gets the same welcome. Not the ones who look like money. Not the ones who look like they belong. Everybody. If there's anyone here who can't give a man a key without first deciding whether he's earned the right to ask, I'd rather you find work somewhere that suits you better. I mean that kindly. I just also mean it. The room held his words for a moment, and then a small voice broke them. Daddy, Micah said, his head dropping back onto Andre's shoulder, the elephant sliding loose in his fist. Can we go to sleep now? I'm so tired. The sound that moved through the lobby was not quite a laugh. It was the noise a room makes when it has been holding its breath too long and finally gets to let go. Even Eleanor Shaw pressed her lips together. Andre looked at his son, at the heavy eyes and the worn elephant and the absolute uncomplicated trust of a kid who had decided the whole strange night was finally over. He felt the thing that had been sitting in his chest since the revolving door loosen and make a little room. Yeah, buddy, he said. Let's go to sleep. 5 months later, on a slow Wednesday afternoon, a woman came through the revolving doors of the Calloway house in pale green scrubs, a lanyard still around her neck, a duffel bag dragging off one shoulder. She had the gray, hollowed-out look of someone coming off a stretch of nights. A traveling nurse. 300 miles from home with 4 hours until her next shift and no idea where she was going to put her head down. Nadia was working the floor when she came in. She did not wait behind the stand. She crossed the lobby and met the woman halfway, introduced herself by name, and asked how she could make the next few hours easier. She did not look at the scrubs or the duffel or the exhaustion. She looked at the woman's face, and she smiled the way people smile when they actually mean it. Within 2 minutes, the nurse's shoulders had come down off her ears. Within 5, she had a key, a wake-up call set for her shift, and a quiet corner table with a sandwich she had not asked for and was not going to be charged for. In the far corner of the lobby, Andre stood with Micah beside him. He had come for a scheduled visit this time, in an actual jacket, though the boy had still insisted on bringing the elephant. They had been there 10 minutes, and Andre had not announced himself to a soul because he wanted to see this part first. The ordinary version of it. The everyday shape of the thing he had spent his life trying to build. Micah watched Nadia walk the tired nurse toward the elevator. Then he looked up at his father with the serious, thorough expression he brought to anything that mattered. Is that the way it's supposed to go? He asked. Andre watched the nurse step into the elevator, watched her exhale like she had been carrying something for 100 miles, and finally got to set it down. Yeah, he said. That's exactly the way it's supposed to go. Micah considered that with the full weight of his 6 years. Then he nodded once, tucked the elephant under his arm, and reached up to take his father's hand. Nobody should have to earn the right to be treated like a person. Not with the right clothes, not with the right car, not by proving anything to anybody standing behind a desk. You give people dignity first, before they show you a single thing, or you never really had any to give. If this one stayed with you, subscribe and stick around. I've got more stories like it, and I'd rather not tell them to an empty room.